So, Marty Clay, welcome to the Comfort, Peace, and Freedom podcast. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Ken. It's great to have another fun talk after our last session a few months ago. It's an honor to be here.
I delved a little more into who you are. You're like one of those onions. The more you peel the onion, the more that's there, the more layers that you find. And that's a very positive thing for me. I love it when people are very layered and very deep, and they have lots of interests, and you fit that bill. I mean, looking at even some of the things that you've done, highly successful human behavior specialist, self-made entrepreneur, a land healer, which I want to talk more about, passionate snowboarder. I saw some of the photos of you doing that, which looked like it was amazing, and intuitive. So if we could unpack that just a little bit, so our audience understands some of these different specialties, how would you describe a land healer?
Land healer, I would say, is a combination of to simplify it, it's a combination of Reiki and acupuncture, but on the land. And so some people will be like, wow, that's totally out there. Like, how can you explain it further? And it goes back in ancient history, right down to where the pyramids are. The Roman Catholics, all knew about it. And so what would happen back then is when they were thinking of building a church, a lot of the churches or places of significance are on top of these like it's called a positive charge spot. And basically what would they do is, to know if it was a good spot or not, they would leave get animals like cows and whatnot to run around for a year on the land they were thinking, and then after a year they would kill them and cut them up and see if they had any cancer or tumors and stuff. And if there was a lot of stuff like that, they wouldn't build on that site. So now that sounds pretty extreme and out there. To a person, to simplify it, is if you've ever felt like you've looked down a street and for whatever reason you're just like, I don't feel like going down that street. I don't know what it is. Or if you've walked past a building, a shop, it could be a commercial shop, even a house, and you're just like, I just don't want to go in there. That's your intuition picking up on that. That's a perceived negative area that hasn't been land healed. Something could have happened there. Now, you might have gone into a store, on the other hand, or you might have, you're out at the beach on the sand or on the golf course or somewhere that you love, and you feel charged, invigorated, and you don't know what it is, but you just love being there. And so that's anybody tuning into both sides of it. And so the land healing side of it is, people will ask, can you come to my place of business to heal that area, or if it's a house or a particular site.
That is amazing, and it has a lot to do with energy, right? I mean, the energy that the land gives and the energy that you get from it. Is that what we're talking about?
That's correct. It's called, negative. You got positive and negative ley lines, and so it's tapping into the natural energy of that area. Yeah.
So you mentioned the word intuitive, and you put that also on your bio. What when you talk about intuitive, can you tell our audience what you mean by that?
It's going off more of it's tuning in to a feeling, and so like picking up on, like, if I'm conversing with someone I'm coaching, I sort of can just put myself into their shoes and pick up on, what they're feeling. And that's something that's been learned over the years. Like, I would say, like, if you asked me, where did that come from? It would come from when I was, 7 years old, 8 years old, and mum and dad trying to basically hide their financial struggles in the other room so I wouldn't hear it. And that's where it basically grew. And from there, it's basically being able to tune into people's feelings, even if they're trying to hide it.
Now, are you able to use that particular thing in your coaching, or we talk about being a human behavioral specialist? Are you able to really use that? Do people know that you're doing that? Do you talk about doing that, or is that just something that you kind of use in your coaching scenarios?
Yeah, I use that in like the one-on-one sessions, unlocked from within one-on-one session, which Nick Hutchinson and the Book Thinkers team has done, David Meltzer has done, and also Claude Silver, who's the head heart officer of Gary Vee and VaynerMedia. And they're just some notable people, but it's just what sort of comes up in that session that they need to use to overcome whatever they're feeling, and to navigate in that session, basically. Because the whole session is a combination, which you'll like. It's a combination, to simplify it, combination of breath work, visualization, and a guided meditation all into one. And the actual exercise it can go from 40 minutes to an hour, even an hour and 15 minutes.
Well, that is something that I definitely want to get into in a second. I've delved into the Wim Hof world a little bit, and I'd love to talk to you a little bit about that, because there's pleasure from pain when you talk about some of the stuff that he does, for sure. So let's go back, since you mentioned about being 8 years old. I love the story about your first entrepreneurial entrance into doing things and creating a little mini business for yourself. And again, you said two things. While that was a positive experience, it was kind of born from some stressors in your life. And you mentioned your parents and listening to what they had to do. When I was younger, I had 4 brothers, and I loved hanging around adults. I mean, I loved hanging around my brothers, and we did all the things that brothers are supposed to do. But if I had the chance to hang out with the adults, I loved it, because I gleaned so much, and I was so aware, and I wondered what their lives were like, and their relationships and what have you, and how they made their careers and whatnot. Talk a little bit about how this entrepreneurship was born from a stressor, if you will.
Yeah, it was basically, the first business was at 8 years old, and it was selling lollies to the other kids at school. And that was literally just watching another kid at school do it. And I was like, oh, if he's doing it, I'll give it a go. And me and mum, I said to mum, oh, we need to go get a bulk lot of lollies. And so, she took us down to the store, and I had to borrow the money, and she got paid for it. And that was the first business. And what that was stemmed from was basically, they're both hard workers. But then, these unforeseen circumstances would happen that, they wouldn't be able to save, or didn't have the great saving habits. And so, being intuitive, it seemed to build up the intuitive side, but like it was such a struggle. It felt like such a struggle for them, and it felt like a struggle for me. And it was confusing being a kid, being like, they're always fighting and arguing. All I want to do is just play and have fun with them.
And you said to yourself, that's not going to be me. That I'm not going to do that. How do you find the wisdom at 8 years old to say, okay, I'm not going to do something like that?
The vow, yeah, I took a vow at 8 years old that I don't want my life to be like this. Like, there's got to be another way to live. And that was just getting to the point of having enough, having enough pain to go, I've had enough, basically.
Well, they say that parents can teach you 2 things: what to do and what not to do. And hopefully you can learn from both of those scenarios, right?
Definitely.
And you were in school. You were doing. I loved how you took out your first business loan at 8 years old. I think that's fantastic. Did she charge you an interest rate, or was there a?
No, but I had to ask her a few times, but then she backed me, and I felt that was like for me that was huge, because up until that point, like, the school system has never been a thing that's helped me. So like I couldn't even year 1, year 2. So we're saying you about 7 years old, 6, 7 years old. I was getting on my report cards like A pluses, but in my head, I'd be like, when am I going to be found out? I don't understand this. And it wasn't until around year 3, which was, I was about 8 years old, where just before doing this business was they discovered like what would happen is the teacher could see I was bored in school and would point out, would be doing a reading class and she could see I wasn't listening. So what she would do is get me to stand up in front of the class and go, what were we doing? And then everyone would start laughing at me. And it was from that space that I couldn't read. And it also gave me a fear of public speaking because every time I wasn't doing what they wanted me to do, they got me to stand up and kids would laugh and I felt like I was stupid and dumb. And so, yeah, so, and I'd go home to dad and say, like, I feel like I'm stupid and dumb. I'm frustrated. I don't get this. And he said, well, who told you this? Was it a teacher? And I said, no, it wasn't a teacher. This is just how I feel. And at the time, all throughout, up until 17, 18, like he just said, you're a genius. You're a smart boy. Don't listen to him and whatnot. And he believed in me, but I didn't believe in me at that time. And it created a lot of, poor self-esteem and lack of confidence.
You and I are like in a lot of ways there, because I was constantly trying to get teachers to go, okay, so what's the point of this? Okay, how am I going to use this? I remember telling my chemistry teacher, I am pretty sure that I am never going to use what you're trying to teach me right now in my lifetime. I know what I like. I liked history. I liked math a lot. I liked English. And so, yeah, we went through a lot of similar things. You actually said it got to the point where they put you in a special class because you were better learning maybe tactily or being engaged in something than just reading from a book. I think so many kids probably go through that same process and probably still are right now as we speak. And they don't have a way of saying, hey, this isn't the way I want to learn. What would you tell kids to tell their parents that the way you did, this isn't the way I learned. So is there another way?
Yeah, I just felt like it's forced in looking back, like it's like you're getting forced to do something you don't want to do and you don't see the value in it into relation what you want to be doing. So if the parent, like the beauty of the teacher in the special class, like he was able to get our reading back up to the level standard reading within, it could have been 3 to 6 months. And there were 6 of us amazing. Like he was the most amazing teacher. And I incorporated into everything I do today, whether that's with my coaching clients or my daughter, or just very tuned into it. And what it was is he'd throw a football around. So he'd throw a football around to learn. And then he'd go, okay, we'll stop for a bit and then we'll try to learn to read. And so we just kept going backwards and forwards. And that was what it was. It was the fun of learning. So if you can incorporate the fun of learning in anything you do, you will imprint it and you will learn faster. And that's the key to it all.
My daughter was in a Montessori school. And when we first told our friends we were putting her into a Montessori school, it's an advanced way of learning. They thought we were putting her in some home, some home for challenged kids. And we were like, no, you don't understand. They have, if you're in second grade, they have first grade, second grade, third grade, and fourth grade math books. And you can go at your own pace and go as fast as you want and learn as much as you want. And at the same time, if you are an advanced student, you have to turn around and help teach somebody that isn't getting it as quickly as you are. So you had all these amazing interactions with others, and it was just a different way to learn. And there was a lot of hands-on stuff like what you're talking about. So yeah, I'm so glad that you're telling me this, because people need to learn that there is different ways to get kids educated. And in fact, you actually took that experience even into deciding whether or not you were going to go to college. You almost challenged your parents to say, all right, if I do these couple entrepreneurial things, will you stop harping on me to go to college? Talk a little bit about that. I think that's a really great story.
Yeah. So like around like 16, 15, 16 and 17, like in high school, like the teachers are all pressuring you that, you've got to be a doctor or a nurse, some special profession that you've got to go to university. Otherwise the big wide world's going to eat you up. And so it's a lot of pressure
Yeah.
for a kid. And all it did was it just made you overwhelmed. It didn't got you clear on what you actually wanted to do. Like, I think I said to you when we last spoke was if there was a class of business, creating your own business in school, and they said, "Hey, Marty, would you be interested in that?" I would have gone down that route and been all ears. And basically, Mum was another layer of it where she's like, because she's Filipino, and for a lot of Asians or Filipinos or people from third world countries, the only way out of that country is to get a university degree, because then you can immigrate to whether it's the US, Australia, the UK, or somewhere that they think's going to be a better life for them. And so she would always pressure me as well, saying, "Look, you've got to go to university." And I said, "Look, I don't, like, in my eyes at 15, I'm like, for me, I don't have an issue with anyone that wants to go to university. If that's actually what they want to do, that's great. But to the person that doesn't want to do it, like in my eyes, I was like, I don't want to start my life at 23 or 24, spend another 4 years doing what I don't want to be doing, and then be 80,000 or 100,000 in debt." That was my thinking. And so I said to Mum, "Look," I said, what was great about Dad at the time, he was a finance broker. And basically we'd go around the neighborhood, and in each neighborhood he would be able to see, what house would be of value, what's going to go up. And they went up quite significantly. But the beauty of it, it gave me an idea. And I said, "Well, what do I need to do to buy my first house?" And he said, "Well, you just need to get a good paying full-time job with 6 months history and a couple pay slips." And so he said, and I said, "Right, that's what I'm going to do." And I found a job out at Brisbane Airport in the logistics company, which was paying, it was shift work, and it was paying just as much as a nurse, same amount of money.
Wow.
And so I said to Mum, "Look, my goal's going to be," this was my first significant goal, where I said, "Look, I'll bet you before I turn 21, I'll have a house, and then you're going to have to get off my case about going to university." And I really, the goal, I really wanted it by 19. But I was getting rejected, putting in the resumes and applying for jobs, and I wasn't getting that full-time job. So it actually put me back a year, but I did actually get that first house by the time I turned 20. And then Mum said, "Okay, I'll get off your back now. You go do you."
What was that hard for either one of you to, sometimes parents think, man, if I don't, okay, I birthed my child, I feed my child, I clothe my child, I protect my child, I inoculate my child from diseases, I teach them what I can, I make them aware of the world, and then the whole icing on the cake is I give them a college degree before I kick them out of the nest." While that isn't true, and it's never been true in society, that's the only definition of a successful parent, were either of you disappointed that you didn't do that, your mom or yourself, that you didn't go to university? Because I didn't, and I never looked back. I've never been disappointed. I've been very successful, but I've been very blessed, and I'm grateful for that. But I never looked back, because the paper never defined the man or the woman, in my mind. What you accomplished did. So I'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, looking back, I've never had regret on going to university, because I speak to a lot of people, and they, a lot of them, either that first year in university is sort of a discovery of still figuring out what they want to do, and then a lot of them drop off or don't finish the 4 years. And so for me, I didn't have that regret. And I looking back, the regret I do have would probably be I wish I left school when I was 15. And the only reason I did did it to year 12 was because dad would always go. Dad didn't have a university degree, and he left when he was 15, and he said it was such an issue back then getting a job without that year 12 certificate. And so I was like, all right, I'll do that. But that's my only regret. I should have left earlier.
You talk, you also talk in pair with that thought about starting your life when you're 23. One of the comments you made was the more you looked at adults, the more you came to the conclusion, I'm not going to wait until I'm 67 and retire to start living my life. Now, you and I are absolutely in sync on that. I believe that there's balance to living all of your life, not just when you're 67, certainly because it's not a good idea to take up golf after you're 67 for two reasons. Number one, it's a hard game. And number two, your body takes a beating doing it. And you need to be, obviously accustomed to that kind of thing. You wouldn't want to take up snowboarding at 67 as your first shot at it. Why was that so important to you to learn that particular fact?
I just think it was just looking around and seeing how adults were going about their lives, like being in the workforce and trying different, like, at one stage I was, making sushi.
You made sushi.
Sushi, yeah. And then at one point I'm a kitchen hand washing dishes. This is throughout while I'm like in my teens. And then, at one point I'm picking up manure and I'm just looking around, just trying to make a quick buck. Like I'm just chasing the dollars at the same time going, this isn't for me. Which is good. But you get to the point where you look around and you see, I just could see how miserable some people were. And I'm like, I could see how miserable and the pain they're going through, but they're just going along on that rat wheel day to day, and living for the weekends. And I'm like, there's got to be another way. And then I'd look at, people that are mastered their craft in whatever field it is, whether it's sports or whatnot, being an entrepreneur or a business. And you can just see how passionate, and the ones that really love it. I'm like, well, they've found it. So I've just got to keep throwing mud against the wall to see what sticks.
And you did that well, Marty. I mean, you talk about, obviously you had your second business loan by the time you were 20, right? Your first one was from your mom at 8, and your second one was a real business loan, I'm assuming, to get the house when you were 20. Your goal was to be a millionaire by the time you were 30. Now, when you talk about being a millionaire, that means a lot of things to a lot of different people. I mean, yeah, you could look at your bank statement and say, okay, there is 7 numbers there. There's a 1 followed by 6 zeros. I did it. Was that really the driving force? I mean, knowing you, it probably was something more than just staring at $1 million in your bank account. What was important? What was important about being a millionaire by the time you were 30? And
I think it was probably not a good goal. Like it was to prove a point. Like I just felt like throughout school, like I'm useless, like to the perceived world. Like if anyone was to go, Marty Clay in school, whether it was the teachers or the other students, they'd be like, you'd be the least person to succeed. So it was out to prove a point that I've got something to offer if you give me the opportunity, and I can show you. But in the school system, yeah, it didn't look that great. So, I guess you could look at it, the gift of the school system for me is it gave me a burning desire to make a difference in my life and not just become another statistic.
How many that's such a great point for everybody out there to hear. How many teachers have told people like yourself and people like me, you're never going to amount to anything. And then they go on to be like, the founder of Aerosmith or someone who founded Apple Computer, who, or Microsoft, who doesn't even have a college degree or whatever. And it's just amazing to me how teachers don't understand how much power they have, positively or negatively. when it comes to kids. You actually listed about 30 different negative emotions that you were carrying around with you. And, I talk about in my book, the balance of trying to, your head is like a 5-gallon bucket. You can only hold so many things from an emotional standpoint, and how emotions are a choice. And you decided at some point to flip the switch from those 30 negative emotions that you were carrying around with you. And I feel bad for you because I get it. I was bullied as a kid too. So I understand what it feels like to be looked down upon and like you're never going to amount to anything. You just want to hide. Okay.
Yeah.
So, how did you flip the switch from those 30 negative emotions to realizing they were not only a choice, but I'm going to replace those with the opposite of those emotions or the positive ones?
I think, it's starting like, cause you're just going from failure to failure to failure to failure. And then going, you know what? I think I've got something to offer. And then, through multiple businesses throughout high school, other businesses, and then I bought and sold cars to save up all the money on my own for the deposit to buy the house. I never got the money from my parents. And that was the big catalyst, I think, for setting me on a different trajectory to say, look, you just did that on your own. You set out a goal and you achieved it. And that was a big win. So it was just stacking on, okay, what else can I do? And like when I was at the logistics company at the airport, like I actually rose up quite quickly into a supervisory role, which I had to try out for over 6 months against, people in their 30s and 40s. And I was able to land that job at 20. So that was like another big catalyst to go, well, you just, you performed and you did what you had to do. And that was another win. So I started getting the feeling, oh, this, I can actually do this. If I set my mind to something and visualize a goal that I want to achieve, I can actually achieve it. And so they were the two big catalysts for then, going into thinking, well, what else can I do? But, when I was at the airport, the logistics company, I actually incurred bullying from another staff member there. And I couldn't understand why, because I was, doing the best I could do. And what would happen was that he would play out the same role as that teacher when I wasn't listening and like, belittle me, like get everyone to like I'd stand up in front of the class and everyone laughing at me. What he would do is he would point out if I made a mistake over the radio in front of all these different sections.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. And he wouldn't do it to others. It was just like he had this chip. I don't know what it was, but I wanted to knock him out basically.
So let me get this straight. He would say, hey everybody, Marty just did this. Can you believe it? I mean, that he literally would do that over the radio
in a subtle way. He'd be like, Marty, oh, you missed this, or where was this bit? And it's just like, why did you have to say it over the radio? Like, and it just it like looking back, it was the same sequence, the same scene as that teacher when I was 7 or 8, and the gift from it was basically, I was like, I've got this anger, and like other people wanted to deck him and belt him, but I'd go through the correct channels, human resources and everything, and they just say you need to document everything, and if it happens again, like in that state, it'd happen again, but you're not thinking about, oh, I'll quickly write down the scene and everything. And so I was like, oh, I've got an issue with anger, and so what it did was basically it was the introductory to getting deeper in personal development. And I sought out a hypnotherapist. So I would have been about 22 at this time, 22, 23. And I was skeptical with the hypnotherapist, but I was still like, I don't want to act like, like you see on stage, people acting like a chicken and that. So I didn't know what to expect, but it was nothing like that, and it got me to incorporate doing meditation on the day-to-day. But basically what it did is, what we uncovered in there, I wanted to travel. And this was around the GFC time, and I've got my mortgage, I've got my home loan, I've got my house, and I'm like, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. And at that time, and I was like, do I want to leave this good paying, secure job at this time? And I ended up making the jump. I took a redundancy because they offered either a redundancy or you can go work in the section he was in. And I'm like, I don't want to go work in his section.
Yeah.
So basically what happened was I was able, with the redundancy, pay my house a year in advance and whatever the utilities and that. So I didn't have to think about it, but I was left with about $5,000 in my bank account. And I thought, well, how can I see the world and not rack up a credit card debt? And so I just Googled, how to travel the world and make money. And what came up was, working on a cruise ship, and you didn't need much experience, like no experience. You could just apply. And what was happening is I'd apply and get rejected and never get a job on there. And I was like, well, what else? There's got to be another way. And I figured out my friend was working on super yachts. And so Googled what a super yacht was. I didn't know what a super yacht was at that time. And all you needed was a 2-day course. It was a 2-day course that cost about $1,200. And that's basically what I did. I got that, and I was talking to all the recruitment companies, because you'd go fly over to the south of France to look for a job on these super yachts. And basically you just door knock on each super yacht in the marina.
Seriously.
Yeah, that's all you do. But, you're going over there with no certainty you're going to get a job.
Right.
And so, like, all the recruitment companies are like saying this was the worst time to go over there because it was the GFC. You need like minimum 2 years experience. I had none basically at that point. And when they told me that, I went and got some work experience on a local boat, smaller boat, in Australia on the Gold Coast, and got 3 months worth of work experience. And that took a 2-hour drive round trip each day for that.
Wow.
Wasn't getting paid. And my first stop overseas was to Dubai, and I got offered a job in Dubai over there. But at the time, it was only for one person, and I had my partner. So I was actually trying to find a job for not only myself, but my partner at the time. And the recruitment said, it's a 0% chance. You both need to have 2 to 3 years experience in the industry. And I didn't let it deter me. I just was like, oh, well, I'm just going to go and see what happens. I'm going to have fun. Never been to Europe. If it doesn't work out, I'll just come back home. And after Dubai, I went on to south of France to Antibes, and was just door knocking, going, have you got any day work? Which at that time they were paying €120 a day. And they said, yeah, we do. And I did 5 days on that ship. It was a 72-meter fed ship.
Wow.
And cost over 350 million euros to make. And they said, we'd like to offer you a job after 5 days and your partner. So it can happen.
And the greatest part about that is, while you went into the unknown, you still must have had a vision for why you were doing it, right? So, I mean, when you think about a lot of the influences in my life were that I saw the way other people lived. Okay. I saw some of the amazing ways that people lived, some of the things they acquired, and the things weren't as important as the memories that we created with those things. And I've been a boater my whole life. I've been around small boats and big boats. I've actually rented boats like you're talking about for a week with friends and whatnot. And it's always interesting to see how other people live, because that just puts another vision into your head about what's possible. So for you to get your house settled, go to another country, not really have any money, and then look for day work, you must have had a lot of, I mean, obviously there's courage, there's initiative, there's persistence, but you must have had a vision for what the end game was for you. Okay. So tell me a little bit about what kept you going? I mean, where did the energy for the persistence that you had, where did it come from? What did you want for yourself that kept driving you? Because we talk a lot about vision and how it once you know what you want your life to look like, there's a lot of ways to get there. And you obviously are someone that has taken that path or those paths, multiple paths. What
Yeah,
drove you to keep that thing going?
it was to get over the fear of the uncertainty was the hypnotherapy sessions. That was, if I didn't do those sessions, I would not have left. I would have been still in my job. That's the first factor of it. But the driving factor has always been, well, I can make a lot of money doing it. At the same time, I can travel and have fun and see the world. So it was, and not rack up a credit card debt. So that was pretty much the nuts and bolts of it. Was, yeah, like you said, I had to create the vision, which the visions was created in the hypnotherapy sessions, which are very much like, how to explain if no one's done a hypnotherapy session. All it is it's getting you down to the subconscious, parking your conscious side of your mind and visualizing and creating in the subconscious. So very much like meditation. And so that's where I was creating that vision.
And do you use these therapies now yourself in what you're doing when you're talking about performance, or is that something you feel like you can help others do?
Yeah, it's integrated in that session that I do on people, that unlock from within session, which is that combination of breath work, visualization, guided meditation as well. So what I've done is I've crafted it all into one, which is very unique, and I haven't come across anyone else that's done anything like it. And like David Meltzer and Claude Silver, when they did it for the first time, they were like, yeah, I've not experienced anything like this before. So it's a very powerful tool.
And now that we've gone there, I've done some Wim Hof. I've seen a lot of his videos. How he gets people to jump into 42-degree water and be happy that they did it is really amazing. The breathing techniques. I actually do in the wintertime. I do those in my gym in the morning, and in the summertime I do them outside around this little pond that I have, and try to really quiet myself and really get that breathing going. How did you discover Wim Hof, and can you tell our audience quickly what that means to you?
With the Wim Hof breathing, like that, it's a combination of doing ice bath and cold therapy and breath work. And I actually, later on the journey after the cruise ships, I went into commercial industrial real estate, and then was getting frustrated in there, even though that I was making a lot of money. It took a few years to, but what would happen is I'd go to these workshops for seeking out, like, there must be something better out there for me. And one of the workshops was breath work. And so I was introduced to it was a 3-day breathwork session, which I had to do to get signed off to be a certified mindset coach and human behavior specialist. And at that point, and that was about 2015, and it wasn't we didn't do any Wim Hof breathwork at that point. We did multiple other different variations of breathwork, whether that was open-eyed or closed-eyed, laying down, standing up, sitting down, and it was amazing. Like, it was so profound, the experience, that I kept on with it. And it was a few years later that I got introduced to Wim Hof, and just the feelings and sensations that it activated in my body. Like, I can't go without a cold shower or ice bath in the morning to start my day, just because it just centers me and sets me off on the start of the day, to tackle the fires that might arise during the day. And I've noticed when I don't do it, I'm more triggered and reactive and stuck in the triggered and the reactive, rather than coming up with the solution. So I've found doing the breath work and the cold showers, the ice baths, what it does also you got the health benefits side of it. But for me, what I find is I can come up with a solution a lot faster.
Okay, so let's do this, because I've done the alternative with the hot shower, make it cold, count to a minute, and then put it back to hot and make it cold. I've done all that. I'm into everything. Okay, I'm into all the different types of proactive health care that there is. Okay, I'm really into reducing inflammation. I beat my body up pretty good on a constant basis, and I love to take very good care of it. I do all kinds of analytical things to make sure that I'm where I'm supposed to be. I haven't gotten myself yet to the ice bath. Okay, so for our audience out there, you have a bathtub. It's full of extremely cold water. You're going to immerse your body into it. How are you using the breathing so that people can actually do this without dipping their toe in the water and then running for the hills? How do you actually, like, if you were going to coach somebody to get into that cold water, what are you telling them?
So before, because a lot of people because I facilitate doing ice bath sessions, and also sell portable ice baths. A lot of people come at it like they hate the cold or they've got the fears. And so, like anything in life, you've got to be able to settle that analytical mind. And so what I do is we get them to do the breath work, whether it's the Wim Hof breath work, before they go into the ice bath, whether that's the 11-minute 3 rounds, or you got a 4-round ones, there's even 5-round ones. And you can get all this on YouTube, the free version, or you can get his app, which is free as well. But then I get them to do it with their eyes closed, and that just calms them down and neutralizes anything that they were thinking about before and gets them in the moment. And after that, basically after the 3 rounds, I tell them to, keep your eyes closed. But now I want you to think of a time, the last time you were in peak state, and let me know once that vision pops up, the last time that you felt like you were in peak state and you felt like you could just take on the world. And then they'll go, yep, Marty, I'm ready to go. And then I get them to go into the ice bath. And then we do the breathing again, breathing in the ice bath. And what I say, because everyone's different, is I get them to, whether they try it with their eyes open or their eyes closed. And basically, they may have a goal of just doing it for 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes. But we can get them to go for 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes. And from the physical benefit side, 2 to 3 minutes in it is more than enough. But if they go on the 10 minutes or the 15 or 20, it's sort of like it's just having that win that they can do it.
And when you say peak state, you're talking about when was the last time that they felt really sound mentally? Is that what you're saying? Or
that's right. Yeah. So they could have been they might have been 14 or 15 or 20. And then I'll say to them, describe how old. I'll ask, how old were you? Describe the scene. And now I want you to incorporate that and then open your eyes and walk into the ice bath or hop into the ice bath.
Wow. All right. Well, you got me sold. So you're going to have to take me through this. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. I'm a golfer and I'm in my 50s. And even though I do whatever I can proactively, there's some aches and pains. And I know that this is really great for inflammation. There's no question. And I'm sure it's also good for your mental state. So I'm going to have to get one of your ice baths, and then you're going to have to walk me through it. And then,
look, do it over Zoom as long as you've got another person that's supervising physically. But I do it over Zoom as well. So, and that's been the key. Like I always ask people the feedback, without that sequence, would you have been able to last in it long or not? And they say, they would have been in there for 10 seconds or 20 seconds or 30 seconds. And so going through that sequence, we actually get them to get beyond the pain. So that initial pain. And that's where the breakthrough is, getting beyond that pain.
Well, I walk from my house to my gym. My gym is in a separate building. It's a detached garage and it's upstairs. And in the wintertime, I'm in my shorts and my t-shirt and that's it. And I'm walking, it's about 40 yards. And when it's freezing cold out, I have to tell myself as I'm walking from one warm building to the other, you know, cold is good for inflammation. Cold is good for inflammation. I just keep telling myself that. And then pretty soon you make it across and you're like, okay, that wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
that 20-mile-an-hour ice cold wind didn't hurt me so bad. So speaking of cold, you're an avid snowboarder. I love the pictures that I saw of you doing that. It looked like the most amazing, serene, unbelievable place in the world. You decided to turn a hobby into, again, this is entrepreneur number 3 or 4 for you now, where you turned a hobby into something of a passion, into an entrepreneurial endeavor, starting your own company. And I often coach people to find, you know, what's missing in an industry or what's wrong with a current industry that you can go into, because if something's either missing that's needed or something's wrong that could be corrected, you're probably going to be successful, because obviously other people are missing this boat, if you will. So what was your idea about the snowboarding apparel company? Was it something that was missing or that was broken or could be improved upon, or just something brand new that led you to that endeavor?
It was interesting. Like, I guess I came at it as, how can I incorporate more snowboarding in my life?
I love that.
and I thought about, at that time, it's like, could I be could we live in the mountains and I'll be a snow instructor? And then I thought about, well, maybe I'll lose the love of snowboarding,
Right.
because I'm, at the end of the day, does a masseuse actually want to keep massaging people at the end of their day? I don't think so.
Right.
Or does a cook, does a cook or a chef want to keep cooking after? They don't really. Or you see the builder, he's like,
Good
I'm going to
point.
build, I'm going to do my renovations. I'm a builder, but they never get done.
Right.
And I think that's a key there. And so that was the initial. But then the second part of it, I was like, the I guess the point of difference with the NFPD Snow brand, which is our business, is we sell a technical hoodie. So what we were saying is, there's a lot of people who just liked wearing a hoodie, skiing or snowboarding. And so what we've got is, we're like, well, you've got your phone, you've got your lift pass, but that all fall out if you just got a standard hoodie. So what we created was, we've got it's a zippered hoodie, zippered sweatshirt. So that had zippers on, on every area. Like you had it on your arm, a media pocket and whatnot. So that's the core of what we sell, is those technical hoodies.
So let's talk about that. So that business is now in 12 countries, I think you have, and that business is growing. And it sounds to me like that business, as it keeps growing and gets more successful, will allow you more time on the slopes, which is a wonderful
the ultimate
thing.
goal. Yeah.
So there it is. There it is again. You had a driving vision way beyond selling clothing, and I love that, because that's what I'm trying to teach people, is begin with what you want that to look like and then find the way to get there. Okay. So people will say to me, well, you're lucky, Ken, you're just one of those entrepreneur people. And I always look back at them and say, okay, here's a piece of paper and a pen and some crayons, draw entrepreneur. Okay. Draw that. And you can't, because it's a vague term in and of itself. Right. So what is your definition of an entrepreneur, first off? And then I'm going to ask you something as a follow-up to that.
Definition of an entrepreneur, to me, is, I guess, yeah, it's an interesting question.
Isn't it?
It's a good question. Yeah, like there's so many layers to it. The first thought that popped out is someone that just doesn't stop, keeps going from failure to failure. And the second part of it, it's got to be of service to the world.
Love that. Now, In what I've written, I talk about the characteristics of an entrepreneur, persistence, resilience, initiative, faith, humility, simplicity, charity, generosity, all those types of things, vision. And I think anybody can be an entrepreneur. I really do. Once they have a reason to be. And that's where it goes back to that vision that you were talking about. The slopes necessitated that you create a company close to that endeavor. So my feeling is anyone can be an entrepreneur once they have a reason to be. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, 100%. That is 100%. Yeah, exactly. It's if you can see it for yourself, like for me, like being able to create a business, the vision there is to have more options, more flexibility, more freedom with my time, but also to show people, like I'm an everyday person, that I'm just trying to show that if I can do it, you can do it as well. There's nothing special about me. It's just willing to take action and give it a go.
That's exactly right. I love what you just said. There's nothing special about Ken. That's for sure. There's probably anti-special. I'm just someone out there who saw what I wanted, and like you, found a way to go after it. But I saw what I wanted first, and that's what created all this. So you have as we're getting closer, we're talking with Marty Clay, who again is a performance coach. He is an entrepreneur. He's an intuitive. He's a land healer. Many layers to Marty, which is why I loved this conversation. Why I was so happy to get you on the show today. Your goal is to vision and empower over 1 billion people. I'm a huge believer in the fact that our brain is wired that if it sees something clearly enough, it's going to attract itself to it almost involuntarily. So when you talk about to empower over 1 billion people, tell me about that goal. What do you mean by that?
It's whether it's, the pay, like if I'm dealing with one person or 10 people or 100 or 1,000 or 2,000 or 10,000, and whether they see me in whatever form, whether it's through the podcast Unlocked from Within and who I interview, like guests like yourself, or my coaching sessions, or any other avenue, whether it's through the businesses, is that it inspires them and awakens something in them. If they can find happiness, peace, love, and joy on a day-to-day, and then they can then help others do that. And it's that pay it forward effect. And I think the more people that can look within and go within, and that's through personal development, self-development, reading books like the book that you have and other books, anything that can improve their lives makes the world a better place. Because that means more people are going to be happier, less crime, and we're going to raise our vibration, frequency, and consciousness. And so that's what I mean by empowering others.
Well, it's amazing work what you do. I'm sure that the world thanks you for that. Okay, and I'm sure that that you're having a huge impact on a lot of people. In the final question that I always ask everybody is, so I believe that everyone should be chasing a certain concept, a certain nirvana. But if you draw nirvana, it's not something you can draw. It's not an easy thing to nail down. So I kind of created this concept of comfort, peace, and freedom, which is, the three things that I think everyone should be chasing. And that's going to look different for everybody. Some people are going to want to do X, some are going to do Y. Some people are going to want to live these amazingly glamorous lives. Some other people are going to want to live a more calm, subdued scenario. And they're all right. I mean, everybody is right when they design their life because it's their own. It's your unique scenario. It's your unique way of living. So I'm going to ask you 3 quick questions, okay? Where are you your most comfortable?
Where am I most comfortable is when I'm doing breath work, and when I'm coaching and serving people.
Beautiful. So when not including work now, where do you find that you are most at peace?
Snowboarding, out in nature. I'm the most grateful. I get it all at the same time. I'm doing what I love. I'm grateful. I'm doing something active. I feel healthy. I'm invigorated, energized, alive. And that's when I'm most feel connected, and one is outside.
Beautiful. And then finally, the third one was freedom. You know, we talk about freedom, not necessarily from the aspect of democratic freedom or freedom from wars or tyranny, but freedom to be spontaneous, freedom of the mind, free of stress. So where do you find yourself when you feel the most free?
When I feel my most free, it's doing the things I love doing. Now, and if I'm, and you know, if I there's, you know, during the day there might be things I don't enjoy the most, or when adversity and challenges hit, the biggest and fastest thing to change that state so I can feel peace and freedom in that moment wherever I am is doing breath work and meditation, or that cold shower to snap me out of that state, so then I can feel that freedom.
Awesome. Why don't we do this real quick? Again, we're talking with Marty Clay, and Marty Clay has been successful in so many different things. If you look up the word persistence and resilience, you're going to find Marty Clay, because no matter what he's done, he's stuck with it. Even if he's moved on to do other different things, he's found a way to create a great life for himself. Where can we find you, and where should somebody go to look to see what you're all about and how they can get involved?
If anyone's interested in the coaching sessions, it's martyclay.com. So that's MartyClay. You can also check out the podcast on there, and also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Audible. And you can also check me out on Instagram. It's Marty Clay Official. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Marty Clay as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time today. And I do want to get back and talk to you about the ice bath, because sometime in the very near future, I'm going to send you, I'm going to send you a picture of, me just taking the dive and making this happen, because I know it's good for me and I know it's good for my physical and mental state. So I'm going to have you walk me through that. But
for sure.
But yeah, that's really great stuff. Thanks for coming on the show today, and let's stay in touch. Okay.
For sure. Thanks again.